Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her gloved hand, leaving a small streak of cleaning solution across her dark skin. The bathroom on level 47 of the Meridian Tower was spotless now, just like the other six she had cleaned that morning. She gathered her supplies into the wheeled cart, the familiar squeak of its left wheel echoing in the marble-tiled space. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sprawling metropolis of New Geneva stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Flying vehicles zipped between the towering structures like metallic insects, their engines humming a constant urban symphony. Maria had worked in this building for 3 years, but she rarely looked at the view anymore. It reminded her too much of dreams she had given up. "Maria, you missed a spot on the mirror," came a sharp voice from behind her. She turned to see Jennifer Walsh, the building's head of facilities, pointing at an imaginary smudge. Maria had learned long ago not to argue. She simply nodded, pulled out her cleaning cloth, and polished the already pristine surface again. "Better," Jennifer said with false sweetness. "Oh, and the boardroom on level 52 needs special attention today. Some important alien delegates are arriving this afternoon." Maria's hands paused for just a moment. In all her years working here, she had never seen any of the alien species that humanity had made contact with over the past decade. They conducted their business on the upper floors, in a world as distant from hers as the stars they came from. "Of course, ma'am," Maria replied, her voice steady despite the flutter of curiosity in her chest. As Jennifer clicked away on her expensive heels, Maria pushed her cart toward the service elevator. The building had 2 elevator systems, the gleaming express lifts for the important people, and the service elevators for people like her. She had never questioned this arrangement before, but today something felt different. The service elevator groaned as it climbed toward level 52. Maria used the time to think about her daughter Sophia, who was studying xenolinguistics at the university. Sophia was brilliant, everything Maria had dreamed of becoming before life had other plans. The cleaning job paid for Sophia's education, and that made every sore muscle and tired evening worthwhile. Level 52 was unlike anywhere else Maria had been in the building. The hallways were wider, the lighting softer, and the air itself seemed to shimmer slightly. Her cartwheels moved silently across floors that looked like polished obsidian. Everything here was designed to impress beings from other worlds. The boardroom doors were massive, carved from what looked like a single piece of dark wood that seemed to move and shift in the light. Maria had to use both hands to push them open, and when she stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. The room was enormous, with a table that could seat 50 people, but it was the walls that made her gasp. They were transparent, and beyond them was not the city skyline she expected, but a view of space itself. Stars twinkled in the darkness, and she could see the curved edge of Earth below, blue and white and impossibly beautiful. "It's a holographic display," she whispered to herself, remembering something Sophia had mentioned about advanced alien technology. "It has to be." But as she began cleaning, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that she was actually looking out into space. The view was too real, too vivid to be just a projection. She found herself pausing frequently, cloth in hand, staring at the cosmic display. It was during one of these pauses that she noticed something moving among the stars. At first, she thought it might be debris or a satellite, but as it grew larger, she realized it was a ship. Not one of the sleek human vessels she sometimes saw on the news, but something entirely different. The ship was massive and seemed to be made of a dark, almost organic material. It moved with purpose toward Earth, and as it drew closer, Maria could make out intricate patterns carved into its hull. The patterns seemed to pulse with their own inner light, creating a hypnotic display against the starfield. "I should finish cleaning and leave," she told herself, but she couldn't look away. The ship continued its approach, and soon Maria could see that it wasn't alone. Smaller vessels accompanied it, forming an impressive fleet that moved in perfect formation. These weren't the friendly diplomatic ships she had heard about on the news. These looked powerful, ancient, important. A soft chime filled the room, and Maria jumped, dropping her cleaning cloth. A voice spoke from hidden speakers, using words in a language she didn't recognize. The sounds were beautiful but alien, with rolling consonants and musical tones that seemed to resonate in her bones. She scrambled to pick up her cloth, her heart racing. She shouldn't be here when the delegates arrived, but as she turned toward the door, it slid shut with a soft hiss, and she heard the distinct sound of locks engaging. "No, no, no," she whispered, pulling at the door handles. They wouldn't budge. The voice spoke again, and this time Maria thought she heard something familiar in the alien words. A rhythm, a pattern that reminded her of something, though she couldn't place what. Sophia had played recordings of various alien languages for her, explaining how each species had developed communication in different ways. The room's lighting dimmed, and the space view became even more vivid. The approaching ships were close enough now that Maria could see figures moving within them through transparent sections of their hulls. The beings inside were tall and moved with fluid grace, but she couldn't make out details from this distance. Maria pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself invisible. She was just a cleaning lady who had gotten trapped in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe she could hide behind her cart until the meeting was over. But as the lead ship drew near, what must have been a docking bay somewhere in the building, Maria felt something strange happening. The air in the room began to vibrate, and she could swear she smelled something like cinnamon and starlight, if starlight had a scent. The alien voice spoke again, and this time Maria's eyes widened. Buried within the beautiful foreign words, she heard something impossible. Her name. Not Maria, but the pet name her grandmother had called her as a child. Mariposa. Little butterfly. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against the wall. It had to be coincidence. There was no way these aliens could know a name that only her grandmother had used, a name that had died with the old woman 15 years ago. The ships completed their docking, and Maria heard the distant sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps, but also something else. A sound like wind chimes, or perhaps scaled skin moving across stone. She looked around desperately for somewhere to hide, but the room was too open, too exposed. The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by voices speaking in that same musical language. But underneath the alien sounds, she heard human voices too. The Dragon Emperor specifically requested this room, someone was saying. He insisted on the stellar view for the negotiations. Dragon Emperor? Another voice replied. I thought they were called the Draconic Hegemony. Same thing. Their leader has held the title for over 3,000 years, according to our xenoanthropologists. Maria's blood turned to ice. Dragons. She was about to be discovered by actual dragons. Sophia had told her about them, one of the most powerful and ancient spacefaring civilizations humanity had encountered. They were said to be beautiful and terrible, capable of both great wisdom and devastating warfare. The door locks disengaged with a series of soft clicks, and Maria watched in frozen terror as the massive doors began to swing open. Light from the corridor spilled in, followed by shadows that seemed far too large to be human. The first figure to enter was indeed human, a man in an expensive suit who looked like every other executive Maria had ever seen. But he was followed by something that made her forget how to breathe. The dragon was nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shifted color from deep emerald to gold as he moved. His face was elongated and elegant, with large, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. He wore robes that looked like they were woven from starlight itself, and when he moved, Maria could hear that wind chime sound she had noticed earlier. Behind him came others of his kind, each unique in coloring and bearing, but all carrying themselves with the same regal dignity. They filed into the room and took their places around the great table, their movements graceful and precise. Maria remained frozen against the wall, hoping against hope that they wouldn't notice her. But as the Dragon Emperor settled into his chair at the head of the table, his head turned toward her corner of the room. Their eyes met. Maria expected anger, or perhaps annoyance at finding a human servant where she didn't belong. Instead, she saw something impossible in those ancient golden eyes. Recognition, and something that might have been wonder. The Dragon Emperor rose from his chair, ignoring the confused murmurs of both the human delegates and his own companions. He moved toward Maria with slow, deliberate steps, his gaze never leaving her face. Impossible, he whispered, and Maria realized with shock that he was speaking English, though his voice carried harmonic overtones that made her bones vibrate. The room fell silent. Even the humans seemed to sense that something unprecedented was happening. The Dragon Emperor stopped just a few feet from Maria, studying her with an intensity that should have been frightening but somehow wasn't. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "You have the face of stars," he said. "The eyes of the void between worlds. How can this be?" Maria tried to speak, to explain that she was nobody important, just a cleaning lady who had gotten stuck in the wrong place. But no words came out. She could only stare up at this magnificent being who was looking at her as if she held the answers to every question in the universe. "My lord," one of the other dragons said carefully, "perhaps we should begin the negotiations. The humans are waiting." But the Dragon Emperor raised one clawed hand for silence, never taking his eyes off Maria. He seemed to be searching for something in her face, some confirmation of a theory too incredible to voice. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice gentle despite its alien harmonics. "Mama Maria," she stammered. "Maria Santos." He nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he had suspected. "And your grandmother? What did she call you?" Maria's world tilted. There was absolutely no way this being could know about her grandmother, about the pet name that had been their little secret. But somehow he did. "Mariposa," she whispered. The effect of that single word was immediate and dramatic. Every dragon in the room drew in a sharp breath, and several rose from their chairs. The Dragon Emperor himself took a step backward, his golden eyes wide with something that looked like awe. "The name carries the true sound," he said, speaking now to his companions in their musical language. "After 3,000 years she has been found." Maria understood none of their rapid conversation, but she could hear the excitement, the disbelief, and something that sounded like reverence in their voices. The human delegates looked as confused as she felt, demanding explanations that no one seemed willing or able to provide. Finally, the Dragon Emperor turned back to Maria. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of emotion that transcended species barriers. "Mariposa," he said, pronouncing her grandmother's name for her with perfect intonation. "Do you know what that word means in the old tongue? The language of the first worlds?" Maria shook her head, too overwhelmed to speak. "It means soul of the eternal mother," he said softly. "It is a name that has been lost to time, spoken only in the most sacred of prophecies." The room spun around Maria. This couldn't be happening. She cleaned bathrooms and mopped floors and worried about paying Sophia's tuition. She wasn't part of any prophecy, she wasn't special. But the Dragon Emperor was kneeling now, lowering himself to her level with movements that seemed choreographed by the cosmos itself. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of 3,000 years. "Forgive me, mother," he whispered. "I did not know you had been born among the youngest of species. I did not know you had been waiting." The last thing Maria saw before her consciousness fled was the sight of every dragon in the room following their emperor's lead, kneeling before a woman who had been cleaning bathrooms just an hour ago. When she woke up, nothing would ever be the same again. Maria woke up in a bed softer than clouds, surrounded by walls that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, but the ache in her back from years of cleaning work was real enough. She sat up slowly, her mind struggling to process what had happened. The room she was in defied description. The walls shifted between transparency and opacity, sometimes showing the vastness of space, sometimes displaying alien landscapes of impossible beauty. Furniture seemed to grow from the floor itself, organic curves that supported her perfectly without any hard edges. "You're awake," came a familiar voice. Maria turned to see Sophia sitting in a chair that hadn't been there a moment ago. Her daughter's face was pale with worry, but there was something else in her expression: wonder, fear, and questions. "Sophia? How are you here? What happened?" Maria's voice came out as a croak. Sophia leaned forward, taking her mother's hands in hers. "Mom, what didn't you tell me about Abuela? About our family?" The memories came flooding back. The boardroom. The Dragon Emperor. The impossible moment when he had called her mother and knelt before her like she was something sacred. "I don't understand any of this," Maria whispered. "I was just cleaning, and then The dragons brought you here, Sophia said, to their ship. Mom, their ship is 3 miles long and it's floating above New Geneva. The entire world is watching. Maria struggled to absorb this information. Their ship? But why would they? Because they think you're someone important. Someone they've been looking for. Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. Mom, they're calling you the Void Mother. They say you're from their oldest prophecies. Before Maria could respond, the wall became transparent, revealing a corridor beyond. The Dragon Emperor approached, his massive form moving with that same fluid grace she remembered. He wasn't alone. A smaller dragon walked beside him, this one with scales that shifted from silver to blue like captured moonlight. The wall dissolved entirely, allowing them to enter. The Dragon Emperor had changed from his formal robes into something simpler, but he still moved with the bearing of absolute authority. When he saw that Maria was awake, he stopped and inclined his head respectfully. Forgive the intrusion, he said in that harmonically rich voice. I am Corvathian, Emperor of the Draconic Hegemony. This is my daughter, Lyralee, our finest scholar of ancient lore. The smaller dragon stepped forward, her movements carrying a nervous energy that reminded Maria of Sophia when she was excited about a discovery. Honored mother, Lyralee said, her voice higher and more musical than her father's. We have so many questions. But first, we must know. Do you remember anything? Any dreams, any visions, any sense of a life before this one? Maria looked between the dragons and her daughter, feeling like a fraud. I don't remember anything. I'm just a cleaning lady. I don't know why you think I'm this mother person. But you've made a mistake. Corvathian and Lyralee exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. It was Lyralee who responded. May we show you something? It might help you understand. Maria nodded, though part of her wanted to run back to her simple life of mops and cleaning solutions. Lyralee gestured, and the air in the room shimmered. Images began to form, not on any screen or surface, but floating in three-dimensional space around them. Maria found herself looking at scenes of incredible beauty and terror. This is the story as it has been passed down through 3,000 years, Lyralee said. The story of the Void Mother and her children. The images showed a figure that made Maria's breath catch. It was clearly meant to be a woman, but she seemed to be made of starlight and shadow, beautiful beyond description. Around her moved creatures of all kinds, not just dragons, but beings that looked like living crystals, others that seemed to be made of pure energy, and species Maria couldn't even begin to categorize. In the beginning, Lyralee continued, when the galaxy was young and chaotic, the first sentient species arose. But they were scattered, afraid, alone. War was constant. Entire civilizations fell to violence and mistrust. The images changed, showing battles that spanned solar systems, planets burning, species going extinct in flashes of devastating light. Then she came. The Void Mother. She who was born between the stars, in the empty spaces where possibility lives. She gathered the children of the galaxy and taught them to be more than their fears. Now the images showed the Starlight Woman moving between worlds, and wherever she went, the fighting stopped. Different species began to work together, to build instead of destroy. Cities grew that housed multiple races in harmony. Under her guidance, the first galactic civilization arose, a golden age that lasted for millennia. Art, science, philosophy, all flourished. The dragons were her first children, the ones who stayed closest to her teachings. Maria watched, mesmerized despite herself. The civilization shown in the images was incredible, spanning thousands of worlds and countless species, all working together. But she knew it couldn't last forever, Lyralee said, and sadness crept into her voice. The children had to learn to stand on their own, so she made a choice that broke the hearts of every being she had touched. The images showed the Starlight Woman beginning to fade, becoming translucent, ethereal. She dispersed herself across space and time, becoming one with the void between stars. But she promised that when the galaxy had grown enough, when her children were ready for the next step in their evolution, she would return. The final image showed the woman dissolving into points of light that scattered across the cosmos like seeds. The prophecy says she will be born among the youngest species when the time is right, that she will have the face of stars and the eyes of the void, that she will be found doing the humblest work, for greatness often hides in simplicity. Lyrelai gestured again, and the images faded. The room was silent except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. "You have her face," Korvathian said gently. "Your eyes hold the same infinite depth, and your name, Mariposa, soul of the eternal mother, it is the name spoken in the prophecy." Maria felt tears running down her cheeks. "But I don't feel like any kind of mother to the galaxy. I can barely take care of my own daughter." "You raised me to be everything I am," Sophia said softly. "You worked 3 jobs to send me to university. You never complained, never gave up. If that's not maternal love, what is?" "And," Lyrelai added, "the humility in your words is exactly what we would expect. The prophecy says she will not recognize her own greatness at first." Maria stood up, pacing to the transparent wall. Outside, she could see Earth below, blue and precious and fragile. "Even if all this is true, even if I am somehow this person you've been waiting for, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do?" Korvathian joined her at the window. "The galaxy has grown since the Golden Age. Humanity has joined the community of spacefaring species, but old tensions are rising again. There are those who believe in conquest rather than cooperation. War threatens to return on a scale that could destroy everything we've built." "The hegemony of iron has been expanding aggressively," Lyrelai said. "They believe that only the strongest deserve to survive. They've already consumed 12 peaceful civilizations. They're moving toward the core worlds next." "The Galactic Council has tried diplomacy," Korvathian continued. "But the iron hegemony respects only strength. Every species is preparing for war, but war will only lead to more war. The cycle will begin again unless someone can show us a different path." Maria pressed her hand against the transparent wall. "You want me to stop a war? But I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about galactic politics or military strategy or diplomacy." "You don't need to," Sophia said, joining them at the window. "Mom, you've been stopping conflicts your whole life. Remember when the Garcia family and the Johnsons were feuding over the property line? You didn't argue with them or threaten them. You invited them both to dinner and reminded them what they had in common. That's different. That's just being neighborly." "Is it?" Korvathian asked. "The prophecy doesn't speak of the Void Mother as a warrior or a politician. It speaks of her as one who reminds her children of their connection to each other and to something greater." Lyrelai stepped forward eagerly. "The old texts say she doesn't command obedience through fear or force. She inspires it through love and understanding. She helps her children remember who they truly are, underneath their anger and fear." Maria thought about her grandmother, who had called her Mariposa, and taught her that every person carried a spark of the divine. She thought about Sophia, brilliant and kind despite growing up poor. She thought about all the small acts of compassion and connection that had shaped her life. "What would I have to do?" she asked quietly. "Come with us to the Galactic Council," Korvathian said. "Meet the leaders of the various species. Let them see what we see. The prophecy says that when the Void Mother returns, her children will recognize her immediately, even if they've never heard of her before. And if they don't recognize me, if I'm not who you think I am, then we'll bring you home. And you can go back to your life," Lyrelai said. "But if you are the Void Mother, if the galaxy is ready for its next step forward, then doing nothing isn't really an option. The war will come regardless." Maria looked down at Earth, thinking about all the people going about their daily lives, unaware that their planet's future might depend on decisions made in the depths of space. She thought about Sophia's future, about the kind of galaxy her daughter would inherit. "How long do I have to decide?" "The council convenes in 3 days," Korvathian said. "The Iron Hegemony has demanded a meeting. They claim they want to negotiate, but our intelligence suggests they're planning to deliver an ultimatum." Sophia took her mother's hand. "I'll come with you if you go. I speak 4 alien languages, and I understand galactic politics better than most humans. You won't have to do this alone." Maria squeezed her daughter's hand, drawing strength from the connection. "What about my job? My life?" I took the liberty of contacting your supervisor, Corvathian said, and there was something that might have been amusement in his voice. I told her you would be unavailable for an extended period due to important family business. The Meridian Corporation has been very understanding. You didn't tell them. Nothing about prophecies or cosmic significance. Simply that you were needed elsewhere. Maria took a deep breath, tasting air that was somehow cleaner and more energizing than anything she had breathed before. If I do this, if I try to be what you think I am, what happens afterward? Assuming I don't get everyone killed? Lyrelei smiled, the expression transforming her draconic features into something warm and hopeful. Then we begin the real work. Building a civilization worthy of the stars, creating a galaxy where every species can flourish, preparing for challenges we haven't even dreamed of yet. The universe is vast, Corvathian added, full of wonders and dangers we're only beginning to understand. Your children, all of us, will need guidance as we take our next steps into the cosmic community. Maria walked away from the window, moving to a part of the room where she could think clearly. Everything in her life had prepared her for taking care of others, for making difficult decisions with limited resources, for finding solutions when none seemed to exist. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. All right, she said finally. I'll try. I don't know if I'm your Void Mother, but I'm Sophia's mother, and I want her to inherit a galaxy worth living in. Corvathian knelt again, but this time the gesture felt different. Not worship, but respect. Gratitude. Thank you, Mother. Your children have been waiting so long to come home. As the great ship changed course toward the heart of galactic civilization, Maria Santos looked out at the stars and wondered if it was possible for love to be strong enough to prevent a war. She was about to find out. The Galactic Council Station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by 17 different species over the course of 2 centuries. As Maria's shuttle approached the massive structure, she pressed her face to the window like a child visiting a museum for the first time. The station was shaped like a massive flower, with each petal representing a different architectural philosophy and aesthetic. It's beautiful, Sophia whispered beside her. Each section was designed to accommodate different environmental needs, Lyrelei explained from the pilot's seat. The crystalline beings need high radiation environments. The Aquatic Federation requires water-filled chambers. The energy beings exist in pure electromagnetic fields. Maria watched ships of every conceivable design docking at the station. Some looked like Earth vessels, all metal and geometric efficiency. Others seemed grown rather than built, organic curves that pulsed with their own internal light. A few appeared to be made of crystallized music, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure harmony. How do they all communicate? Maria asked. Universal translators, Sophia said, patting a small device attached to her ear. Though most species prefer to communicate in their own languages when possible. There's meaning lost in translation that can be crucial in negotiations. As their shuttle entered the docking bay, Maria could see crowds gathering. Word of their arrival had spread throughout the station, and beings she had only read about in Sophia's textbooks were pressing against viewing windows to catch a glimpse of the human woman the dragons claimed was the legendary Void Mother. No pressure, Maria muttered. Corvathian, who had been silent during most of the journey, finally spoke. Remember, you don't need to convince anyone of anything. Simply be yourself. If the prophecy is true, they will recognize what you are. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper of contact. As the doors opened, Maria was struck by the station's atmosphere. It should have felt alien and overwhelming, but instead, it reminded her of the community center in her old neighborhood, a place where different groups came together for the common good. A delegation was waiting for them. Maria recognized the human ambassador, Catherine Chen, from news broadcasts. The woman looked nervous but determined as she approached. Ms. Santos, Ambassador Chen said, extending her hand. I'm not sure I understand everything that's happening, but the Dragons have requested an unprecedented emergency session of the full council. They claim you have information vital to preventing the coming war. I hope they're right, Maria replied, shaking the ambassador's hand. Though I'm not sure what I can tell you that you don't already know. Behind Ambassador Chen stood representatives of several other species. A crystalline being whose Faceted form refracted light into rainbow patterns. An aquatic Federation delegate in a mobile water suit that allowed them to move freely in air. A tall, willowy being that seemed to be made of living metal, their features flowing and changing subtly as they watched her. Each one studied Maria with intense curiosity, and she was surprised to see something in their expressions that reminded her of the recognition she had seen in Korvathian's eyes. Not certainty, but a sense of possibility, of hope. The Iron Hegemony delegation arrived this morning, the crystalline being said, their voice creating harmonious chimes as they spoke. They have demanded an immediate audience with the council leadership. Their representative is aggressive. General Vex doesn't believe in diplomacy, the metal being added, their voice like wind through steel. He believes in strength and submission. He will not be easy to reach. As they walked through the station's corridors, Maria noticed how the different species interacted. There was cooperation, but also tension. Groups clustered together by species, and she could sense the undercurrents of mistrust and fear that Korvathian had mentioned. "It's like the break room at my old job," she told Sophia quietly. "Everyone trying to get along, but not really trusting each other." The council chamber was enormous, a spherical room with seating arranged in concentric circles that allowed every delegate to see every other delegate. The architecture itself seemed designed to promote equality and open communication. As Maria entered, conversation stopped and hundreds of eyes turned toward her. At the center of the sphere stood a raised platform where speakers could address the entire assembly, currently occupied by a being that made Maria's breath catch in her throat. General Vex of the Iron Hegemony was massive, easily 12 feet tall, with mechanical enhancements that made him look more like a weapon than a living being. His original species was unrecognizable beneath layers of artificial armor and augmentation. When he spoke, his voice echoed with electronic amplification. "The Iron Hegemony has been patient long enough," he was saying. "We have offered peaceful integration to dozens of species. Those who refuse our generous offer face the consequences of their poor judgment." "Generous offer?" The Aquatic Federation delegate's voice bubbled with indignation. "You've enslaved entire worlds." "We have brought order to chaos," General Vex replied coldly. "We have eliminated the weakness that allows suffering to exist. Under Iron Hegemony rule, every being knows their purpose and fulfills it efficiently." Maria felt a chill at his words. She had heard similar rhetoric before, from people who believed that kindness was weakness and that power justified any action. "You have eliminated choice," Korvathian said, rising from his seat. "You have destroyed the very thing that makes life worth living." General Vex turned his attention to the Dragon Emperor, and Maria could see the hatred in his mechanical eyes. "The dragons speak of choice, but what has choice brought the galaxy? War, suffering, inefficiency. We offer something better." "You offer slavery," the crystalline being chimed. "We offer certainty," General Vex corrected. "Submit to Iron Hegemony rule, and your species will have a guaranteed place in the new order. Resist, and you will be removed as an obstacle to galactic peace." The chamber erupted in angry voices from dozens of species. Maria could feel the fear and rage building like pressure in a boiling pot. This was exactly the kind of situation that led to wars. Everyone talking past each other, no one really listening, positions hardening into immovable barriers. Ambassador Chen leaned over to Maria. "This is why we needed you here. Nobody knows how to break through to him." Maria stood up, surprising everyone including herself. "May I say something?" The chamber fell silent. General Vex turned his augmented gaze toward her, and she felt the full weight of his mechanical attention. "Who dares interrupt these proceedings?" he demanded. "My name is Maria Santos," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the acoustic chamber. "I'm nobody important, just a mother trying to understand why her daughter's future is being decided by people who won't listen to each other." She walked toward the central platform, ignoring the shocked murmurs from the assembled delegates. General Vex watched her approach with what might have been amusement. "You are the human the dragons brought here," he said. "They claim you are some prophetic figure. Do you believe yourself to be divine?" Maria laughed. A sound so natural and warm that it seemed to diffuse some of the tension in the room. "Divine? General, I spent yesterday morning scrubbing toilets. If there's anything divine about that, nobody told me. She stepped onto the platform, standing much closer to the massive cyborg than any reasonable person should. But you know what I learned cleaning those bathrooms? I learned that everyone, no matter how important they think they are, is fundamentally the same. They all create messes, and they all need someone to help clean them up. Your point? General Vex asked, though his tone had shifted slightly. My point is that you're trying to solve the wrong problem, Maria said. You look at the galaxy and see chaos that needs to be controlled. But chaos isn't the disease. It's just a symptom. The disease is loneliness. She turned to address the entire chamber. Every species here is afraid. Afraid of being conquered, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being alone in a universe too big to comprehend. So they build walls. They create armies. They convince themselves that the only way to be safe is to make sure everyone else is afraid of them. General Vex scoffed. Sentiment and philosophy. The iron hegemony deals in reality. The reality is that you're lonely too, Maria said, turning back to him. You've augmented yourself so much that you've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's what allows us to connect with each other. She gestured to the assembled delegates. Look around this chamber. How many different species are here? How many different ways of thinking and living and being? That's not chaos to be controlled. That's a symphony waiting to be conducted. Pretty words, General Vex said. But words don't stop wars. You're right, Maria agreed. Words alone don't stop wars. But understanding does. Empathy does. Recognizing that the being you're fighting is someone else's child, someone else's parent, someone who dreams and hopes and fears just like you do. She stepped closer to General Vex, close enough that she had to crane her neck to look up at his face. What were you before all the augmentations? What species? What world did you come from? For the first time, General Vex seemed taken aback by a question. That is irrelevant. I am what I have made myself. But you weren't always this way, Maria persisted gently. You had parents once. Maybe siblings. You were someone's child before you became a general. Something flickered in the cyborg's mechanical eyes. My homeworld was destroyed in the resource wars. My family, my entire species, extinct because the galactic community could not maintain order. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Maria felt her heart break for this being who had turned himself into a weapon to prevent the kind of loss he had already experienced. I'm sorry, she said simply. I'm sorry you lost everything. I'm sorry you felt like you had to become something else to survive. Sorrow changes nothing, General Vex replied, but his voice had lost some of its mechanical coldness. You're wrong, Maria said. Sorrow changes everything. It connects us to each other. It reminds us why we fight to protect the things we love. She turned back to the assembled delegates. Every being in this chamber has lost something. Every species has faced threats that seemed insurmountable. But you're all still here. You've all survived because others helped you, because you found strength in community. The crystalline being rose from their seat, light refracting through their faceted form. The human speaks truth. Our species survived the Silicon Plague only because the dragons shared their knowledge freely. And our first colony ships were built with crystalline technology, Ambassador Chen added. None of us got here alone. More voices joined in, species after species acknowledging debts and connections, admitting vulnerabilities and sharing stories of mutual aid. Maria watched as the barriers between groups began to dissolve, replaced by recognition of their interdependence. This is the choice you're really offering, Maria said to General Vex. Not order versus chaos. It's isolation versus connection. You can force beings to obey you, but you can't force them to care about you. And without that caring, without that connection, all your order is just an elaborate way of being alone. General Vex was silent for a long moment, his augmented systems humming as he processed her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more uncertain. You speak of caring and connection, but caring makes you weak. It makes you vulnerable to loss. Yes, Maria agreed. It does. Caring hurts sometimes. Loving people means accepting the possibility of losing them. But the alternative is living in a universe where nothing matters, where no one matters. Is that really better? She thought of her grandmother, of Sophia, of all the people who had shaped her life through their love and loss. I'd rather hurt because I cared than never feel anything at all. Something extraordinary happened then. Other beings began to approach the platform, not to argue or threaten, but simply to stand with Maria. Korvathian was first, followed by Lorelei, then Ambassador Chen and Sophia. The crystalline being chimed their way down from their seat, followed by the Aquatic Federation delegate in their water suit. Within minutes, representatives from every species in the chamber had gathered around the platform, not facing General Vex as an enemy, but surrounding him as beings willing to include him in their community if he chose to accept it. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Maria said to the massive cyborg. "You don't have to carry the weight of protecting everyone by yourself. We can do it together." General Vex looked around at the faces surrounding him. Dozens of species who had been enemies just moments ago, now united by a human woman's simple recognition of their shared need for connection. "The Iron Hegemony will not simply abandon its mission," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Then change the mission," Lorelei suggested. "Instead of conquering, protect. Instead of ruling, serve. Use your strength to help build something better." "The prophecy speaks of the Void Mother's children growing beyond their need for war," Korvathian added. "Perhaps this is how that growth begins." General Vex was quiet for so long that Maria wondered if his systems had somehow shut down. When he finally moved, it was to begin removing some of his mechanical augmentations. First, a weapon system attached to his left arm, then sensory enhancements that covered his eyes. As each piece was removed, more of his original form became visible. He was tall and lean, with skin that had a subtle metallic sheen but was clearly organic. His eyes, when finally revealed, were large and dark and filled with pain that had been building for centuries. "I am Keithvar," he said, his natural voice much softer than his amplified one had been. "Last of the metallic synthesis people. I have been alone so long I had forgotten my own name." "Not anymore," Maria said. "You're Kethvar, and you're Sophia's honorary uncle, and Korvathian's ally, and the Crystalline Collective's friend. You're part of something bigger now." The transformation that followed happened faster than anyone had expected. The Iron Hegemony's fleet, receiving new orders from their commander, began converting their weapon systems to construction tools. Worlds that had been preparing for siege instead began preparing for the largest cooperative building project in galactic history. The new Galactic Federation would be different from the old Council. Stronger, more inclusive, more willing to help struggling species before they felt the need to turn to conquest. It would have challenges. Integrating different philosophies and needs was never easy, but it would face those challenges together. 6 months later, Maria stood in the observation deck of the new Federation headquarters, watching construction ships from dozens of species working together to build something unprecedented. Sophia was beside her, now serving as the Federation's first director of interspecies understanding. "Do you ever miss it?" Sophia asked. "The simple life?" Maria smiled, thinking about the bathroom she had been cleaning when this all started. "Sometimes. But I've learned that no work is simple if you do it with love. Whether you're cleaning bathrooms or preventing wars, the principle is the same. You're taking care of people." Korvathian approached them, now wearing the simpler robes of a Federation counselor rather than an emperor's regalia. "The Andromedan representatives have arrived. They're interested in joining the Federation." "Another galaxy wanting to be part of the family," Maria mused. "I suppose we'll need to expand the headquarters again." "The universe is vast," Lorelei said, joining their group. "Full of children who don't yet know they're not alone." Maria looked out at the stars, thinking about all the beings out there who were afraid, who felt like they had to choose between conquering or being conquered. The work of building a truly inclusive galactic community would never be finished. There would always be more fear to heal, more connections to forge, more children to welcome home. But that was okay. She had learned long ago that the best work was never finished. It was simply done with love, one person at a time, one relationship at a time, one act of caring at a time. Somewhere in the depths of space, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice calling her Mariposa, little butterfly, soul of the eternal mother. And for the first time since this incredible journey began, Maria Santos truly understood what that meant. She was exactly who she had always been, a woman who took care of people. The only difference was that now her family included the entire galaxy, and they were all coming home,